Have you ever looked at an old photo of yourself and thought, "Where did all the time go?" Maybe your knees creak a little more than they used to, or your energy just doesn't show up like it once did. You're not alone. And the good news is, life isn't done with you yet. Not even close. In fact, some of the most vibrant, joyful, and sharp people I've met were well into their 90s. A few even crossed 100. And they weren't just sitting around watching the clock. They were living. So today, we're going to talk about something a little magical, but also very real, the secrets to living a longer, fuller life. And these aren't theories pulled out of a lab. These are lived experiences, the quiet lessons shared by folks who blew out more candles than most of us ever imagine. There's something deeply reassuring about hearing wisdom from someone who's been there, who's seen the world change 10 times over, and still wakes up with a purpose. Because living longer isn't just about avoiding illness. It's about keeping your spirit alive, staying curious, and having a reason to wake up with a smile. In this video, I'm going to share 5 powerful insights from people who lived past 100. And these are not just tips, they're gentle shifts you can start today. So, let's begin with something that might surprise you. It's not about having a perfect diet or hitting the gym every day. One of the most consistent themes I heard from centenarians was this: they stayed connected. And no, I don't mean Wi-Fi. I mean heart-to-heart, soul-level connection with family, friends, neighbors, or even the man who sold them coffee every morning. You see, loneliness is silent. It doesn't knock on your door or shout in your face. It just creeps in and settles like dust in an empty room. But people who lived long, joyful lives often had someone to share stories with, even if it was just a pet. They made time to talk, to laugh, to be present with others. There's a 102-year-old woman I remember who had breakfast every Wednesday with her granddaughter, even if it was just over the phone. She told me, "That little voice on the line gives me more life than any vitamin I've ever taken." Isn't that something? That's not medicine. That's love. That's connection. And it matters more than we think. So, if there's someone you've been meaning to call, or a neighbor you wave to but never stop and chat with, try it. Not just for them, but for you. That tiny moment of connection might just be the thing that adds not just years to your life, but life to your years. Now, the second thing I noticed about these long livers, and this one's a little unexpected, is that they all kept moving. Not marathons, not CrossFit, just movement. Gentle, intentional movement. One man I met, 104 years old, still walked around his garden every morning to check on his tomatoes. It wasn't about exercise for him. It was about having a ritual, a rhythm, a reason to greet the day. He told me, "I don't move because I want to live longer. I move because life is better when you don't sit still." Think about that. You don't need a treadmill or a fancy gym membership. Just keep your body engaged in the life around you. Water the plants. Walk to the corner store. Sweep the porch. Dance a little while your coffee brews. When your body moves, your mind follows. And it's not just about preventing stiffness or keeping your heart healthy, although those things are important. It's about reminding yourself that you're still here, still capable, still part of the pulse of the world. There's something beautiful about how the body responds to even the smallest acts of care. It's like saying to yourself, I still matter. I'm still in this. Now, I want to share a third secret. Something that might seem simple, but has a powerful ripple effect. Every single centenarian I spoke to had a deep sense of purpose. It didn't matter if they were retired, living alone, or far from family. They woke up with something to do. Even if that something was baking a pie for the church bake sale, or feeding the birds in the park. Purpose doesn't have to be big. It just has to be yours. Maybe it's tending to your garden. Maybe it's volunteering once a week. Or maybe it's teaching your grandson how to play cards. Whatever gives you a reason to lean into the day, hold on to it. There was a 101-year-old man who told me he still sharpened his neighbor's knives every Thursday. Gives me something to do, he said, and keeps their fingers attached. Purpose and humor. He had both. And that's the thing. When you feel needed, when you feel like your presence matters, it breathes energy into your spirit. It makes waking up not just a routine, but a privilege. So maybe today, just ask yourself, what small thing can I do that makes me feel useful, curious, or just a little more alive? You'd be surprised how far a little purpose can carry you. There's something quietly powerful about having a reason to wake up in the morning. When you've got that, even a cup of tea feels like a small celebration. But the wisdom of those who've lived past 100 doesn't stop with connection, movement, and purpose. There's another secret they all seem to share, though they rarely use the word itself: resilience. It's not flashy. It doesn't come with a medal or a certificate. It shows up in the quietest moments, when your knees ache, but you still go for that walk. When the news feels heavy, but you choose to plant flowers anyway. When someone you love leaves, and you still find a way to smile. People who live long lives aren't necessarily the ones who had it easy. In fact, most of them faced unimaginable losses. Spouses, children, jobs, wars, you name it. But the difference is, they didn't let pain close their hearts. They kept going. They adapted. One 103-year-old woman told me, "You don't survive 100 winters without learning how to light a fire in your own soul." That line has stayed with me ever since. Lighting your own fire. It's not about pretending things don't hurt. It's about deciding to keep warm anyway. And you know what? That fire doesn't have to be big. It just has to be steady. And sometimes, the spark for that fire comes from doing something new. That's another unexpected trait I noticed in so many of these vibrant centenarians. They never stopped learning. They were curious, open, willing to look silly if it meant discovering something different. One woman I met in her early 100s had taken up painting at 87, not because she wanted to become famous, but because she liked the way it made her feel. "When I mix the colors," she said, "I forget that my hands are old. I just feel alive." Isn't that beautiful? Learning something new, even something small, keeps your brain engaged and your heart young. Maybe it's a new recipe, a language, or just reading a book you normally wouldn't pick up. Maybe it's learning to use a smartphone without wanting to throw it out the window. That counts too. You don't need to master anything. Just explore. Just give yourself permission to be a beginner again. That childlike wonder doesn't vanish with age. We just stop feeding it. But when you do, when you say yes to curiosity, something inside you softens and brightens at the same time. And speaking of softness, there's one more secret I want to share today. Something all the long livers had in common. It's so simple, we often overlook it. They found ways to feel joy, real joy, not the loud, wild kind, but the kind that sneaks up on you when the sun hits your face just right, or when your favorite song plays while you're folding laundry. They didn't chase happiness. They noticed it. They looked for it in everyday things, a perfectly ripe peach, the scent of rain, a phone call from a grandchild, the feeling of warm socks. Joy, for them, was not a prize at the end of a race. It was woven into the quiet corners of their day. One gentleman, 99 years old, told me he still takes 5 minutes every morning just to feel grateful. Doesn't matter if the sky is gray or if his hip hurts. "I thank the day for showing up," he said, "because that means I get to show up too." That mindset is everything. Because when you find joy in the small things, the big problems shrink a little. Your heart feels lighter. Your eyes stay open. And more than anything, your life begins to feel fuller, no matter your age. So maybe the real secret isn't about adding years to your life, but adding more life to your years. Choosing to stay connected, choosing to move, choosing to matter, choosing to grow, choosing to smile even when you don't have to. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be what you were 20 years ago. You just have to be open. Open to change. Open to love. Open to one more day of wonder. There's something deeply reassuring about knowing you don't have to rush. That you're allowed to slow down, take your time, and still be moving in the right direction. The people who made it past 100, they didn't sprint their way through life. They strolled. They paused. They let the quiet moments speak. And that brings us to perhaps the most beautiful secret of all: they lived with peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything going right, but the kind you choose, even when life is messy. Especially when life is messy. You see, peace doesn't mean the absence of noise. It means having an anchor inside you, something that keeps you steady when the winds of life pick up. For some, that came from faith. For others, it came from deep routines, or time in nature, or a garden they tended year after year. But they all had it, a practice of calm, a way to come home to themselves. I remember talking to a man who was 101 years old, still tending his backyard roses. Every morning he'd go outside, lean in close, and say hello to them. When I asked why, he smiled and said, "Because it reminds me that life is still blooming, even now." That's the kind of perspective that changes everything. When you start to notice the beauty that's still around you, the color of the leaves, the warmth of a hand, the softness of your favorite chair, aging becomes less of a loss and more of a layering, like adding pages to a well-loved book. Now, before we close, I want to say something directly to you. If you've made it this far into the video, chances are you're already someone who wants more out of life. And that's something worth honoring, because curiosity, effort, and hope, they don't fade with age. If anything, they become even more powerful. You may not feel like you did in your 30s, and that's okay. You've got something better now: wisdom, resilience, the ability to see what really matters. And that matters more than youth ever did. So here's what I hope you carry with you from this conversation: that long life isn't about chasing time. It's about choosing it. Choosing to stay open. Choosing to keep learning. Choosing to find joy, to move your body, to love others, and to love yourself. It's never too late to start again. To pick up a hobby you set down years ago. To call someone you miss. To try something that scares you. To laugh so hard your cheeks hurt. That kind of living, that's what the oldest among us were doing all along. And if they can do it, through war, through heartbreak, through every change the world has thrown at them, so can you. You have more power than you think. You have more life in you than you feel. And it's yours to shape today and tomorrow and all the quiet days after. So, let me ask you this: what will you choose today that your future self will thank you for? If you felt inspired by this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's one thing you've done lately that brought you joy? Share it in the comments below. We're building a community here, one wise, wonderful soul at a time. And if this message spoke to your heart, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. We've got more conversations like this waiting for you. About living well, feeling strong, and finding meaning at every stage of life. Until next time, remember this: you don't need to be younger. You just need to be you.